There's something special about our Alpine country in summer. There are no white vistas shrouded with cloud, nor hosts of colourfully clad ski bunnies swarming the resorts. Instead, the countryside is lush with greenery, with fresh leaves on the snow gums and thick grass on the plains. And in the waterways, the elusive rainbow trout are lurking. The high country summer is the perfect time for a caravan touring trip. With some relaxed country camping and a pan full of mountain trout in mind, Anthony and Jane, our intrepid crew, hit the road in the latest 2015 Nova Terra Sportz.
G'day folks, I'm Anthony Kilner and we're up here on the Murrumbidgee River in the magnificent New South Wales high country, searching for the elusive trout. And while we're at it, we're also testing the new Nova Terra Sportz off-road caravan.
While most of their travel into the Alpine trout country was on bitumen highways, Anthony knew that to reach the waters where those big high country trout live, they'd have to get right into the back blocks and enjoy some bush camping. The Terra Sportz handled the highway with ease, but it was off the tar that the van would really shine. But first they called into Adaminaby for some supplies and the most essential part of any fishing trip.
If you're going to go anywhere fishing in this magnificent country, you're going to need an up-to-date fishing licence.
Once stocked up, they headed for a grassy campsite amongst the snow gums to prepare for their rainbow trout adventure. The New South Wales Alpine country is magnificent in summer, but as with any high country, it is subject to rapid weather changes. So it turned out on this trip, with storms greeting them on their first evening. Fingers crossed that the weather would not affect their fishing. After a while the rain eased up and they got a campfire going and settled in for the evening. The weather was cool that night, but they were snug as bugs in the Terra Sportz. The Nova Terra Sportz is the perfect caravan for adventurous tourers who like to enjoy all the comforts and style of a touring caravan, yet feel happy in the knowledge that they can head off-road with confidence. The Terra Sportz is designed specifically to handle genuine off-road travel, not just manicured dirt roads. The Terra Sportz rides on rugged control rider suspension with side brush bars to protect the bodywork and galvanised protection under the floor. An extended A-frame carries a big black Raptor toolbox with generator slide, with gas storage forward and a diesel tank at the rear. Independent camping is enhanced with solar and onboard twin 100 amp hour batteries and two 95 litre water tanks. A generator adds remote power for long-term off-road camping, and an external kitchen adds to the versatility of the Terra Sportz. The New South Wales high country is blessed with plenty of rivers and lakes that are all home to the rainbow trout. After a relaxing night in camp, Ant decided to head down some fire trails to the Murrumbidgee River to try his luck. Some of these fire trails can be pretty rugged, so Ant prepared the Terra Sportz accordingly.
You know, when you head off-road, it really pays to lower your tyre pressures, even if it's a bit, so that the tyres actually mould over the rocks, which will protect the tyres. It'll also give a much softer ride for the suspension and the van itself. You're not going for traction, you're just going to get them to move nicely over the rocks. So we've got over 40 psi in the tyres now, and we're going on light rock, nothing too heavy, so I'm going to drop them down to around 30 just to see how they work. Okay, so you've lowered the tyre pressures, you come back off your trip and you're going to hit the bitumen. This is where you've got to make sure you've got a hose that's long enough to reach from your compressor to the tyres to pump them back up to highway pressures.
Along the way there were some steep tree-lined descents, and Ant had to take care to weave the Terra Sportz through the overhanging limbs. Once through the tree line, the countryside really opened up. As they followed the track through the tussocks, the broad vista of the Alpine grasslands emerged before them. First stop was a smaller stream that ran shallow and fast through the hills. This was reached after a fairly steep gravelly descent, managed easily by the Terra Sportz. This was very pretty country, but with no fish biting, they decided to head for the main river for lunch and hopefully an afternoon appointment with a rainbow trout. Here the river ran clean and clear, and Ant was certain they'd catch their rainbow in this pristine country. The weather was kind at this point, and while Ant and Jane didn't enjoy the feel of a rainbow on the line, they could soak up the grandeur of this magnificent countryside. Perhaps they'd have better luck in the morning after a relaxing bush camp in the Terra Sportz. Overnight rain convinced the crew that a change of location was needed. So Ant and Jane headed back across the plains and up into the trees, seeking a new spot on the river where the rainbows would cooperate. The climb back was quite steep and demanded a fair bit of concentration from Ant, but the Terra Sportz coped with the ascent easily.
When you're going uphill and you're towing a heavy caravan, whether it's 1,500 kilos or 3 tonne, it really pays to choose the right gear before you start heading up the hill. Otherwise you could find yourself trying to get a lower gear to get you out of trouble, and you certainly don't want that to happen, because 3 tonne pulling you backwards is not a nice feeling. The other thing to watch out on when you're on these sorts of tracks is to look for overhanging branches, making sure you take your corners properly so that you don't sideswipe your van, because that's the last thing you want to do is have a great adventure somewhere and come back and find that half your van's gone. So enjoying what you do, being careful, is going to protect you, the van, and there's no speed records for getting there. Conversely, going downhill, you're going to have that same weight pushing you downhill. And the way to help tackle that one, if you need to slow yourself down, is to actually use your brake controller and just pull the van up slowly and gently, so that it starts to pull the weight of your car back. Just takes the pressure off your brakes, and you're not going to run out of brakes, which is also not a nice feeling going downhill. But you'll also be able to sort of control your descent just nicely. Again, slow and steady is the way to go when travelling off-road with a caravan.
The weather cleared a little and they decided on a bit of exploring before hitting the water. Long Plain Hut was a nice place to have a cuppa and check out a bit more of the countryside. After a brew, they headed along another fire trail, this time well maintained, and eventually came back onto the Murrumbidgee. There was another challenge before them here, a very narrow bridge with a sharp approach. Ant was always confident he'd handle the crossing, though Jane had a few misgivings. The Terra Sportz handled the manoeuvre very well considering the overall length of the rig with its extended drawbar. Yet again, however, the Rainbows kept their mouths shut, so it was back onto the fire trails, looking for the night's campsite and a nice piece of trout water. As it turned out, the best spot was on the other side of a fast-running stream, but that didn't faze the Terra Sportz. The van slipped through the water like it was born to swim, with the suspension handling the rocky bottom with ease. After the Terra Sportz was set up in camp, Ant continued his search for that rainbow, with a mob of roos looking on from the bankside trees. Again the weather turned, so it was back to the van to rest up in comfort for the next day's search. Despite the weather, the Terra Sportz makes for comfortable off-road camping. The interior is complete with every possible comfort, from the diesel heater to the roomy ensuite. The bedroom makes for a good night's sleep, while the kitchen, with its diesel cooktop and microwave, provides all you need for a gourmet meal in the bush. It also proved to be a very comfortable independent camper with all you'd need for extended camping in the bush away from the power and water grid. The next hope for a fish was a visit to the famed Yucumbean River. Along the way they caught sight of a mob of the mountain's famous wild brumbies. These stirred images of the classic poem by Banjo Patterson, The Man from Snowy River. However, these horses seemed unlikely to send any flintstones flying as they grazed contentedly on the grasslands, more like their domesticated lowland relations. They turned off the highway onto a riverside track, in part underwater, and pulled up on the shore of this well-known rainbow trout stream. This is lure or fly fishing only, but for Ant that didn't matter because the fish had their mouths well and truly zipped up. There are times, however, when fishing, or any other activity for that matter, pale into insignificance in the face of the magnificent scenery in this part of the high country. Storms chased the crew back to camp, but an evening rainbow gave some promise for the days to come. Dawn brought some better weather, so Ant and Jane decided to abandon the rivers and streams and head for the famous Lake Yucumbean to see if their rainbow trout might be found in those broad, cold waters. First though, a nice hot breakfast whipped up on the external barbecue was in order. Why is it that camping in the bush makes bacon and eggs taste better than home? As luck would have it, as Ant arrived at the lakeshore and began casting, up came a mountain gale and made fishing difficult. He did, however, bump into someone he knew.
Gill shot.
Man, Kilner.
How are you, buddy?
I'm
Long
all
time
right,
no
mate.
see.
Yeah, what brings you here?
Well, trying to catch a trout.
Yeah, me too.
It's not having much luck. The weather's been pretty average, I've got to say.
Yeah, it's a sunny day today and it's blowing its head off.
Which makes it pretty hard.
So what are you up to?
Well, testing a new Terra Sportz from Nova.
Oh, like the other one we did.
Like the other one a few years ago.
Oh, yeah, what's it like?
Well, this one's pretty flash, I got to say. It's big van, big suspension. It's got all sorts of gear on it, like diesel heaters, diesel hot water system, side out barbecue. It's you know your vans. It's all luxury stuff.
Yeah, and I'm tenting it and you're in luxury.
Well, I don't mind. You know, like I could get used to this caravanning thing.
What sort of suspensions have you got? The same
It's
as the
got
last one?
No, the last one had the simplicity and just suspension.
Yep.
But this one's got the 4 independent control arm system, and it's big, 3.5 ton worth. But I tell you, we've been over some really rough country out here, and up hills, down dale, washouts, and it's just walking around beautifully.
Did you go down the Bidgie?
Yeah, we went down there, threw a line in.
There's a nice track down there.
Yeah,
That'd
it
work
is
the
a great
suspension.
track. It did, but the van was really stable. That's what I like about it. The car's moving around more than the van's moving around at the moment. Some of the really
right.
rough stuff.
It's comfortable to camp in.
Oh, beautiful. So easy, it's full on sweet. Just full of water.
You're getting soft.
Yeah, look, you could say that, but I don't mind being a bit soft every now and again. We've got Jane with me, and we're just touring around, having a bit of fun, and she's actually liking a little bit of comfort for a change too.
Oh, good, eh? And what's it tow like on the road?
On the road, she's got a bit of weight there because, my car being an old thing, tows it along, but it sits really quite well. I'm impressed with that. The other day when the storm blew through here, we were coming back from the lake down the road, and the wind was blowing the van and the car, but it tracked really well. It wasn't blowing me off the road.
All right.
Considering it's a 19'6" sort of van, it's a big van.
That's a fair lump of a van. What sort of hitch?
It's got one of those D35 off-road couplings.
Ah,
and you know what?
Right.
I really like them. They're easier than a lot of other couplings to use. You just drive it over, back the car up, drop it on. It's a pin system into the hole in the coupling, lock it in, that easy.
They're good. Has it got one of those external kitchens?
It's got 2 burner stove, and then you've got a sink with a bucket, hot and cold water plumb.
Oh, cool.
So, if I do get a fish, I can at least clean it in a plastic bucket outside the van and not have to worry about it.
Tell me, there's a lot of dirt tracks down here. How'd you go with dust? Because a lot of those off-road vans get some dust in them.
Yeah, this is actually really well sealed. The good thing about this van at the moment with the diesel heating system, there's no gas inside the van, so you don't need the vent down in the door.
Oh, right.
So the only venting is really for the fridge, and that's quite high up. And we've been looking for some good water crossings, but of course, it's summer, supposedly, and most of the rivers are running a bit low. But there's no dust, real dust issue at all, and I'm really surprised about that because it's got a scupper panel,
Yep.
And really just a little bit of stuff come in, but that's about it. Nothing to worry about.
What about setting up? Does it take you long to set up?
It's easier to set up the van than it's been for me to catch a trout.
It's easier to set up a van than a tent too.
Well, there is that.
And I haven't caught a trout either.
Well, maybe we better meet up at the pub tonight and have a beer, and then we can swap tales.
Yeah, and you can tell me a bit more about the van while we have a beer.
I reckon that's a good plan.
Excellent, mate.
Adam Innerby, here we come.
That'll do.
He continued with his rainbow quest, but the wind was making casting a little tricky.
What have you done, Ant?
I've just caught myself a tree.
Mate,
Now-
we're talking fish, we're not talking birds. You're supposed to be catching fish there in the water, not in the trees.
I know, and I put the lure right where I wanted it, right in between the logs over there, because that's where I reckon I'm going to get a fish.
Yeah.
And I wasn't allowing for the wind, which just took the cable or the straight out and around the log. So there she is. I've caught myself a tree.
Outstanding.
I've never said I was a fisher.
Yeah, now you've proved it, eh?
Exactly.
Good on you, Ant.
As the day drew on, it looked like the rainbows were blown away in the wind. So Ant and Jane headed back to their camp to sit back in comfort with some afternoon nibblies and plan their last day of rainbow chasing.
There you go, dear.
Thanks, son.
Cheers.
Cheers.
The final day dawned grey, but at least the wind had abated a little. It was time to do a bit of shoreline exploring to find a spot where the breeze was calmer. Some of the tracks in this particular area were quite rugged, with plenty of washaways and ruts and a few rocky stretches thrown in. This piece of country became a tough testing ground for the suspension of the Terra Sportz, as well as the general toughness of the van. Every structural component of the van was made to work, and it handled this stuff comfortably. A semi-sheltered bay became the setting for a quick lunch break, and while Jane had a spell in the chair, Ant continued in his chase for a rainbow. As the afternoon drew on and the weather became even greyer, yet another sheltered bay showed promise. Access to this spot had an off-camber access point, complete with deep ruts. The Terra Sportz proved really stable as they negotiated this point, and the hitch and suspension worked to help the van safely negotiate this awkward corner. Once down at the lakeside, Ant continued to fish on, but now in the distance came the rumble of thunder. A serious storm was rolling in, with a screen of rain underneath promising a very soggy final fishing session. Ant continued to cast and cast with no sign of that elusive rainbow trout. With the weather deteriorating rapidly, they reluctantly headed back to camp, hauling the Terra Sportz back up the ragged ruts.
Well folks, the weather's closed in and we haven't caught ourselves a trout. We found a really big one here at Adamitaby. So now it's time to pack up the Terra Sportz, head home and start planning the next fishing trip.
While the fishing proved less than successful, the same can't be said for this Nova van. The Terra Sportz proved to be a very capable off-road caravan, able to take on the genuinely rougher tracks they'd encountered on their trip with ease.